My name is Daniel Carter, 29 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. For 5 years, I thought I had found the woman I would eventually marry. Her name was Melissa Hayes, 27, ambitious, vibrant, and in the beginning, everything I thought I needed. 5 years is a long time to give someone. It's long enough to see them at their best and worst, long enough to plan futures in quiet conversations, long enough to imagine your kids carrying pieces of their smile. And for most of that time, I believed Melissa was mine. We weren't engaged yet, but not because I didn't want to be. I was cautious, some would say, too cautious, but I knew when the time was right, I'd propose. She knew it too. I wasn't the kind of guy who hid his feelings. I wore them openly, told her constantly how much she meant to me, and made sure she never had to guess. At least I thought she never had to. Things shifted when Melissa got a job offer she couldn't refuse. She worked in hospitality, and one of the largest hotel chains in the country offered her a management position. The catch: it wasn't in Denver. It was in Chicago. She lit up when she told me. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement I hadn't seen in years. I remember sitting across the table, forcing a smile, telling her, "You have to take it." And I meant it. I knew what it could mean for her career. I told myself we'd survive the distance. I worked remotely, so technically I could relocate someday. But uprooting my life immediately for a girlfriend without the promise of marriage yet felt reckless. So I stayed behind. At first it wasn't so bad. We texted constantly, called every night. She told me about the chaos of the hotel, the difficult clients, the long hours. I understood. I told myself things would even out once she settled. But when her schedule lightened, the distance between us didn't. Calls became shorter. Texts became delayed. When I asked how she was, her answers were clipped. Tired. Busy. Stressful day. I didn't want to be selfish. I knew her job was demanding. But the lack of affection gnawed at me. The woman who used to flood my phone with messages, who used to send selfies just to say she missed me, she was gone. I started to feel like I existed on the periphery of her life. Out of sight, out of mind. I brought it up gently. "Melissa, do you feel like we're drifting?" She sighed, brushed it off. "It's just the distance, Daniel. We'll be fine." But I didn't feel fine. So I booked a trip. "I'm coming to see you," I told her. She was excited, at least she sounded excited. When I arrived in Chicago, she hugged me tight at the airport, and for a moment it felt like old times. For that week, we laughed again. Cooked together in her apartment, walked along the river at night. She smiled at me the way she used to. It was like the distance had been a bad dream. When it was time to go back to Denver, we both cried. I told myself the visit had proved something, that we were still strong, that the distance was just a test we'd eventually pass. But as soon as I returned home, the pattern resumed. Fewer calls, shorter messages, excuses. I tried to stay patient. I told myself love required endurance, that maybe I needed to give her space. But deep down I knew the math didn't add up. I was pouring everything into her 200%, and I was lucky if I got 20% back. The imbalance ate at me. At one point I nearly ended it. "I don't think this is working," I said over the phone one night. My voice shook as I forced the words out. Silence on her end, then the sound of her crying. "Please, Daniel," she begged. "Don't leave me, I can do better. I promise I'll do better." My heart cracked. I hated seeing her in pain, even if she was the cause of mine. So I took her back. That wasn't the last time. We broke up twice, and both times her tears pulled me back in. I wanted to be loved, and I wanted to believe she could still love me the way I loved her. For a while, it seemed like we stabilized. A year passed without major incident. I convinced myself we'd weathered the storm, but beneath the surface, the cracks remained. The signs were subtle at first. On one of her visits home, I noticed her phone was filled with candid picture shots of coworkers at the hotel. One man appeared more often than the others. "Who's this?" I asked lightly, holding up her phone. "Oh, that's Ryan," she said casually. "He hates taking pictures of himself, so I help him out. He wants to post on Instagram again." The explanation didn't sit right with me. She had dozens of pictures of him, more than she had of me in the last year. But I let it go. I didn't want to be the insecure boyfriend. I wanted to trust her. Still, the unease grew. On my next trip to Chicago, I noticed how glued she was to her phone, how she angled the screen away from me, how she ducked under the duvet at night claiming she was cold when in reality she was typing furiously. One night I caught a glimpse. The name on her screen wasn't Ryan. It was a nickname. Cute. Intimate. My stomach dropped. I knew I had to see more. But Melissa guarded her phone like a lifeline. She never left it unattended. So I waited. The day came when she finally slipped into the shower without her phone. My hands shook as I unlocked it, racing against the sound of running water. I scrolled to the messages. My chest tightened as I read their conversations, banter emojis, hints of something more. But before I could export the chat, the water stopped. I froze. Melissa stepped out, towel around her eyes, darting immediately to her nightstand. Her phone wasn't there. She found me holding it. "What the hell are you doing, Daniel?" Caught. There was no excuse, not this time. Her face hardened as she snatched it back. "You don't trust me after everything." The irony of the question nearly made me laugh, because trust was exactly what had been broken. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, the city lights flickering against the blinds, my mind replaying every red flag I had ignored, every excuse I had swallowed. Every moment I convinced myself love was enough. And for the first time in 5 years, I admitted something to myself. It wasn't. The night I caught her wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the unraveling. Melissa didn't apologize when I confronted her. She didn't cry. Not at first. She folded her arms across her chest towel, still damp from the shower, eyes blazing. "You had no right to go through my phone." My jaw tightened. "I had every right, Melissa. You've been hiding it, guarding it like your life depends on it." What was I supposed to think? Her lips thinned. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned away, sat on the edge of the bed, and muttered, "It's nothing." "Nothing!" My voice cracked. "You're texting another man every night, calling him nicknames, sending him selfies, and I'm supposed to believe it's nothing." Her shoulders hunched. It's a crush, Daniel. That's all. It doesn't mean anything." The words hit harder than any confession of outright cheating. A crush. 5 years together, and I was reduced to a placeholder while she giggled with some coworker in her phone. "Who is he?" I demanded. She hesitated, then whispered, "Ryan." Of course, the man from the photos. The one who appeared more often than me. I felt my chest tighten, breath shallow. So all this time, the distance, the coldness, it was because of him. Melissa shook her head quickly. No, Daniel, it's not like that. I was overwhelmed with work. And Ryan, he was just there. He made me laugh when I was stressed. That's all it was. I laughed bitterly. That's all it was. You shut me out. You pushed me away. You left me begging for scraps of your attention. And you gave it to him instead. Don't tell me that's nothing. Tears finally filled her eyes. She reached for my hand. "Daniel, please. I still love you. I didn't mean for it to get out of control. It was stupid. It was childish. You're the one I want." I pulled my hand back. "You don't get to say that after what you've done." The argument spiraled late into the night. Every word she spoke felt like another knife twisting in my chest. "It's just texting," she pleaded. "We never even kissed. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Out of proportion," I snapped. "You built a secret relationship behind my back. You prioritized him over me. You betrayed my trust in the most intimate way. Do you think I care whether or not you kissed? You still broke us." Melissa sobbed, pressing her palms to her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop. It felt harmless at first, but then I started needing it. Needing the distraction. But it's you I love. Please believe me." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. My whole body trembled. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to erase what I had seen. But I couldn't unsee it. "You made me a fool," I whispered. "For months I thought I was the problem. I thought I wasn't good enough, that the distance had drained us. But it wasn't the distance, Melissa. It was you." Her sobs grew louder. "Don't leave me. Please, Daniel. I'll cut it off. I'll block him. I'll quit the job if I have to. Just don't walk away." Her desperation was almost worse than her betrayal. I turned toward her, voice low, shaking. "You don't understand. It's not just about Ryan. It's about trust. And once trust is gone..." I couldn't finish the sentence. The days that followed were a blur of tension. She tried everything, texting me long apologies, cooking dinners when I visited, touching me like she used to, but all of it felt staged hollow. I couldn't stop seeing his name lighting up her screen. Couldn't stop hearing her voice saying it's just a crush. The phrase replayed in my head like poison. A crush. That's what she called it. As if my pain could be minimized by the word. As if losing me was a risk she was willing to take just for a little excitement. Every time I looked at her, I wondered what he had that I didn't. What jokes he told, what glances he gave that made her forget the man who gave her 5 years of loyalty. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. We sat in her apartment, the silence suffocating. She reached for my hand again, eyes red from crying. "I'll do anything, Daniel. I'll delete him. I'll change jobs. I'll move back to Denver. Just please don't throw this away." My chest ached. For a moment, I almost caved. I almost let her words sway me like they had before. But something hardened inside me. "You had 5 years to choose me," I said quietly. "And you didn't. You chose him. Maybe not with your body, but with your heart. And I can't forgive that." Her face crumpled. She fell to her knees, clutching my leg. "No, please, Daniel, don't say that. Don't do this. I can't lose you." I looked down at her, the woman I once thought I would marry, and all I saw was someone who had already lost me long before this moment. "I'm done, Melissa," I said. "It's over." That night, I walked out of her apartment, leaving behind 5 years of love, laughter, and plans. My chest felt hollow, my steps unsteady. But beneath the heartbreak, a quiet fire began to burn. She thought I would forgive her again. She thought my love made me weak. But this time, I wasn't going to be the one left shattered. This time, I would be the one to decide how the story ended. And Melissa Hayes had no idea what was coming. Melissa didn't let me go easily. After that night, my phone buzzed, constantly. Calls, texts, voicemails. Apologies layered over apologies, each one more desperate than the last. "I'll end it with Ryan. It's over, Daniel. Please believe me. I'll quit my job. I'll move back to Denver. We can start fresh. I'll do anything. Don't give up on us. 5 years can't just disappear." Every word felt like a twisted echo of the promises she had already broken. But instead of blocking her, I answered. Calm. Controlled. I told her we could try again. I told her what she wanted to hear. The act wasn't easy. When she came back to Denver 2 weeks later, lugging suitcases up the stairs of my apartment, her face glowed with hope. "This is the right thing," she said, dropping the keys to her Chicago apartment into my hand. "No job is worth losing you." I smiled, faintly kissed her cheek, and said, "I'm glad you realized that." But inside, the fire burned hotter. I wasn't taking her back. I was dismantling her. She tried to slip back into the life we'd had. Cooking in my kitchen, rearranging her clothes in my drawers, curling against me on the couch at night. But every touch felt like a lie, every smile like a mask I refused to wear anymore. I played along just enough to keep her believing, until the moment was right. It came one Saturday afternoon. We were out downtown, walking through the crowded streets, the kind of day when the city hums with life. Melissa looped her arm through mine, chattering about how she might start applying for new jobs in Denver, maybe in event planning or retail management. She laughed about how different it would feel to rebuild together. That's when I stopped walking. She turned confused. "What's wrong?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and let the mask drop. "There's not going to be a rebuild, Melissa." Her smile faltered. What do you mean?" I took a breath. "I never forgave you. I never planned to. You threw away 5 years for a crush, and then you thought you could come crawling back when it fell apart. I let you think we could fix this so you'd burn everything else down, your job, your apartment, your life in Chicago. But Melissa..." I shook my head. "There is no us anymore." Her face went pale. You're joking." "I'm not." She stumbled back a step, eyes wide. "You let me quit. You let me move everything. You knew I was giving it all up for you." "That's the point," I said coldly. "Now you know what it feels like to lose something you can't get back." Her voice broke into a scream. "You're cruel. You're heartless." Heads turned. People on the sidewalk stared. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "No, Melissa, I'm balanced." Then I walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the street, sobbing, begging, her world collapsing in front of strangers. The fallout was messy. She called for days, her messages swinging from rage to despair. How could you do this to me? I made a mistake, Daniel, but I loved you. You ruined me. Please, please, please answer. When I didn't respond, she showed up at my building, pounding on the door, screaming my name until the neighbors threatened to call the cops. I stood inside back, pressed against the wall, listening to her breakdown. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no pity, just release. People say revenge doesn't heal you. They're right. It didn't stitch up the hole she left. It didn't erase the nights I lay awake wondering why I wasn't enough. It didn't make me trust again. But it did something. It evened the scales. She betrayed me, made me feel invisible, disposable. So I let her feel disposable too by making her throw away the life she had built for another man. Now she was the one left crying, begging, picking up pieces. I wasn't smiling when I shut the door on her that night. I wasn't celebrating. I was just breathing easier finally. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one bleeding. She was. That's how our story ended, not with forgiveness, not with healing, but with a quiet kind of justice. Melissa thought she could betray me and still hold on to me. She thought my love would keep me chained. But she forgot something. Even the quiet ones can burn everything down when pushed too far. And I made sure she learned that lesson the hard way. Here's the next story. My name is Ethan Cole, 35 years old, living in Houston, Texas. For most of my adult life, I thought marriage meant building something together brick by brick, dollar by dollar, sacrifice by sacrifice. I believed love was a partnership. That was the lie I carried until the day my wife looked me dead in the eye and told me I was nothing more than an ATM with legs. It sounds absurd, doesn't it, like something out of a bad sitcom? But when the words came out of Hazel's mouth, they weren't a joke. They were a confession. I wasn't born rich. Everything I have, I built. Long hours, missed weekends, sweat soaked into the drywall of office walls I stayed in long after midnight. I founded Cole Electric Solutions, a contracting company that started with me and a rusted van. Now we employ 30 men, run projects across the city, and gross over $7 million a year. That kind of growth doesn't come without cost. It eats you alive sometimes. I worked myself to exhaustion chasing deadlines, putting food on the table, paying the mortgage on a house Hazel picked out because it had the right light for Instagram pictures. Hazel worked too, if you can call it that. She had a part-time sales job at Nordstrom, 20 hours a week, a paycheck that barely covered a week's worth of groceries. She treated it like a hobby, a reason to dress nice and talk about handbags. Every dollar she earned vanished into candles makeup or shoes she swore were investments in her look. I didn't mind at first. I was proud to provide. My father Leo always told me a man's shoulders should be broad enough to carry his family. And mine were. But shoulders break eventually when someone else keeps piling on weight. Hazel's sister Kathy didn't help. She was older, bitter from 2 failed marriages and carried herself like an unpaid life coach. She visited often drinking wine in our kitchen while whispering poison into Hazel's ear. "You don't need to work harder," Kathy told her one night while I sat in the next room pretending not to hear. "Ethan makes enough for both of you. He should be spoiling you more. Look at you beautiful young stuck in the suburbs with 2 kids. You deserve more, Hazel." Hazel giggled. "He does provide. But sometimes I feel like he loves his company more than me." Kathy smirked. "Then remind him what your role is. You're the prize. Men are replaceable. ATMs with legs." I froze. I thought maybe Hazel would correct her, that she'd defend me. Instead, she laughed too loud too long. "You're terrible," she said, but her smile lingered. That was the first time I heard it. ATM with legs. I told myself it was nothing, a joke fueled by Chardonnay. But the phrase stuck in my chest like a splinter. Weeks later, it wasn't a joke anymore. It was a fight about money because every fight we had eventually circled back to money. Hazel had spent nearly $2,000 on designer purses in a single month. I saw the charges on the Amex statement, sat her down at the kitchen table, and asked, "Do you even realize how hard I work to keep this family afloat?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. You make plenty." "Plenty." My voice rose. "I worked 60 hours this week. I'm dead on my feet. And you're out here swiping cards like the bills pay themselves." That's when she said it. "Maybe stop acting like such a martyr, Ethan. You're just an ATM with legs. That's your role. Provide, swipe, repeat. The words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I just stared at her, waiting for her to take it back to laugh and say she didn't mean it. But she didn't. She crossed her arms chin high, daring me to argue. Something inside me cracked. I carried that crack with me for days. It grew wider every time I saw her scrolling Instagram, posting pictures of handbags with captions like, "Treat yourself always." It split further every time Kathy dropped by smirking at me as if I were a fool who hadn't figured it out yet. The final blow came on a Saturday night. We were out to dinner with friends. Someone asked Hazel how work was going at Nordstrom. She smirked, twirled her wine glass, and said, "Oh, I don't really work. I've got an ATM at home." The table erupted with laughter. Even Kathy cackled, clapping her hands. I didn't laugh. I didn't even breathe. I sat there staring at the woman I married, realizing she had said it out loud, not just in our kitchen, not just in private, but in public, in front of friends, like I was a punchline. I excused myself, went to the restroom, and looked at my reflection. My eyes were bloodshot. My tie felt like a noose, and in that moment I knew something had shifted forever. I remembered what my father told me after his own marriage imploded. The moment someone stops respecting you, son love isn't enough to keep them. Respect is the spine. Break it, and the whole thing collapses. Hazel had broken it, and for the first time in our marriage, I stopped feeling guilty about what I had to do next. If she wanted to see me as an ATM, then I'd show her what happens when the machine shuts down, and she would never see it coming. After that night at the restaurant, something inside me hardened. I went home, tucked the kids into bed, and sat alone in my office with the Amex statement in front of me. Line after line of charges glared back: Nordstrom, Louis Vuitton, Sephora, Saks. Nearly $5,000 in 1 month. $5,000 I had sweated through 70-hour weeks to earn. Hazel's laughter from dinner replayed in my head. "I've got an ATM at home." That was the moment I decided. If she wanted to treat me like a machine, then fine. But the machine was going offline. The next morning, I logged into every account. I called every credit card company. I revoked Hazel's access to the joint accounts, canceled her cards, locked down the corporate lines she'd been dipping into. By noon, she was holding a useless piece of plastic in her manicured hand, staring at it like it had betrayed her. "Ethan," she said, storming into my office, "what the hell is this? My card isn't working." I looked up from my laptop, calm. "I know. I canceled it." Her mouth fell open. You canceled my card?" Without even asking me. "It's not your card, Hazel. It's mine. And I'm done funding your shopping sprees." Her face flushed red. "Done funding? Are you kidding me? I'm your wife." "Exactly," I said evenly. "My wife, not my dependent. If you want to buy handbags, use your Nordstrom paycheck." Her voice rose to a shriek. "I barely make $800 a month." "Then live within $800 a month," I replied coldly, "because that's what you actually earn." She sputtered, unable to form words. Then she spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. That afternoon, Kathy showed up. She leaned against our kitchen counter, sipping wine like she paid the mortgage. "Hazel tells me you canceled her cards." "That true?" "Yes." She smirked. "Wow. Controlling much. That's financial abuse, Ethan. Do you want people to know you're the kind of man who traps his wife?" I met her gaze. "No, Kathy. What I want is for Hazel to stop treating me like a cash machine. Abuse is stealing from me and laughing about it." Her smirk faltered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of unease. The real explosion came a week later. Hazel dragged me to the Galleria Mall under the guise of buying shoes for Sophie. She picked out 3 boxes of designer heels for herself instead. At the register, she swiped her new card, a card tied only to her tiny Nordstrom account. Declined. She tried again. Declined. The cashier glanced at me nervously. Hazel's cheeks turned crimson as people in line shifted uncomfortably. "Run it again," Hazel snapped. The cashier did. Declined. I placed a hand on the counter, calm as stone. "We'll just take the shoes for our daughter," I said. Hazel spun toward me, eyes blazing. "You did this! You're humiliating me!" "No," I said quietly so only she could hear. "You did this. When you called me an ATM in front of our friends. Machines don't hand out money to people who don't have accounts. And right now, Hazel, your account is empty." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no comeback. We left with a single box of children's sneakers. Hazel cried the entire ride home. That night, I sat on the back porch with my father, Leo. He smoked a cigar, slowly watching the Texas sunset burn orange across the horizon. She called me an ATM dad, I admitted, and I shut it down. I don't know if I did the right thing. Leo exhaled smoke, his eyes steady. Son, a man provides because he loves, not because he's obligated. The moment love turns into entitlement, it's no longer provision, it's exploitation. You did the right thing. If she values you only for the money, then taking the money away is the only way she'll see the truth. His words settled deep in me. Hazel thought she had power because she had my wallet. She forgot who earned it. She forgot who built it. Now she was about to remember. And this was only the beginning. When Hazel realized the money wasn't coming back, she didn't fold. She plotted. Kathy was at the house nearly every night, wine glass in hand, whispering in Hazel's ear like the devil perched on her shoulder. From the hallway, I caught fragments of their conversations. He's abusing you financially, Kathy murmured. Cutting off your cards, making you beg. You need to hit back. Hazel sniffled. What am I supposed to do? Make him look like the villain. If people think he's controlling you, you'll have the sympathy. And while that storm is brewing, we'll get into his accounts. He thinks he's clever. Let's show him he's not untouchable. I should have stormed in right then, but I didn't. I listened. I wanted to know how deep they were willing to sink. The answer came sooner than I expected. One Tuesday afternoon, I got an alert from the bank. Multiple failed login attempts on my business account flagged from a Starbucks Wi-Fi in Midtown. Minutes later, another alert, someone trying to access my personal account. I froze staring at the notifications. Hazel and Kathy had a Starbucks ritual every Tuesday, lattes and gossip, and now apparently cybercrime. I called the bank, locked everything down tighter, and requested an activity report. When it arrived, my stomach clenched. The timestamps lined up exactly with their Starbucks visits. The audacity stunned me. It wasn't enough to bleed me dry through shopping. Now they were trying to pick the locks of the vault itself. That night I confronted Hazel. She was sitting at the kitchen island scrolling Instagram when I dropped the printouts in front of her. Her face went pale. What's this? You tell me, I said coldly. These are failed attempts to get into my accounts. Guess where they came from? The Starbucks you and Kathy treat like a second living room. Her lips trembled. I don't know anything about this. Don't lie to me, I snapped. The bank traced the IP. The time matches perfectly. Hazel, you tried to hack into my company. Into me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. I can't live like this, Ethan. I can't live poor. The words hit me like a brick. Not I can't live without you. Not I can't live without our marriage. Just I can't live poor. I stared at her, the woman I'd married, and realized there was nothing left to salvage. That night I packed a bag. Where are you going? She sobbed, chasing me to the door. To my father's, I said flatly. I won't stay under the same roof with someone who treats me like prey. Leo opened the door before I even knocked. He took one look at me, duffel bag in hand, hollow eyes, and knew. She's not done, son, he warned as I set my bag down. Women like that and sisters like hers, they don't stop when the money dries up. They escalate. You'd better be ready. I nodded slowly. I know. The weight of his words settled heavy in my chest. Hazel had crossed a line with those hacking attempts. She wasn't just reckless, she was desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just a marriage on the rocks. It was war, and I wasn't about to lose. Hazel always knew how to cry. When I confronted her about the hacking, she collapsed in tears, clutching the counter as if the house itself was slipping away. Her mascara smeared down her cheeks, her voice trembling with desperation. I don't know how to live like this, Ethan. I can't live poor. I can't. The honesty was brutal. Not I can't live without you. Not I can't live without our marriage. Just I can't live poor. That was the final nail. I left that night duffel bag over my shoulder and drove straight to my father's. Leo didn't even ask questions, just stepped aside, let me in, poured a whiskey and said, told you she'd show her true face. But he also warned me, this isn't over, son. Desperate people don't back down. They double down. And Hazel. With her sister behind her, you'd better brace yourself. I thought he was exaggerating. He wasn't. 2 days later, Hazel called me. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaking, but not with sadness, with venom. You can't just abandon me. You're financially abusive. You cut me off, humiliated me, left me with nothing. I'm not going to stay quiet about this. That was the start of the smear campaign. She posted vague statuses on Facebook. Funny how some men look like providers but act like prison guards. She DM'd mutual friends claiming I controlled her access to money and kept her trapped. Kathy fanned the flames, whispering to neighbors Ethan may look successful, but you wouldn't believe how he treats Hazel. The poison spread fast. People I'd known for years started looking at me differently, and then it escalated. It was a Thursday evening when the knock came. 2 officers stood at my father's door. Mr. Cole, one asked, "We need to ask you a few questions regarding allegations of domestic violence." My chest went cold. What? They read off the report Hazel had filed. According to her, I had grabbed her by the arm, shoved her against a wall, screamed threats. All lies. But lies with weight when written on official forms. Leo's jaw clenched as he listened. "My son's been here all week. He left her house days ago. He hasn't even stepped foot in that place since." The officers exchanged looks. "We'll need statements, but if what you're saying checks out, this won't go anywhere." When they left, Leo slammed his fist on the table. "Told you. She's dangerous now. She'll burn the whole house down if it means painting you as the arsonist." I needed help. That's when I called Garcia. Detective Ramirez Garcia wasn't cheap, but he had a reputation in Houston for exposing fraud and catching liars. Former HPD, sharp eyes, sharper instincts. When I laid it all out, the ATM comments, the credit card abuse, the hacking attempts, the false police report, he leaned back in his chair and nodded. "She's building a narrative," Garcia said. "First financial abuse, now domestic violence. She's stacking the deck for a divorce case. Make you look like the monster, so she walks away with half your assets and sympathy from the judge." My stomach turned. "So what do I do?" "You fight narrative with evidence," he said. "You say she hacked your accounts, I'll get the logs. You say her sister's forging documents, I'll get photos." The trick isn't just proving she lied, it's proving she planned to lie. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt resolve. Meanwhile, Hazel doubled down on her performance. She called mutual friends in tears, spinning the same story: Ethan left me penniless. He controlled everything I had to beg for money. Some believed her, others didn't, but she didn't care. Sympathy was currency, and she was cashing in. Kathy played her part too, feeding Hazel lines, coaching her on what to say if questioned. I overheard one phone call by accident when Hazel forgot to mute. Kathy's voice stick to the script. "You're the victim. He's the abuser. He cut off your access right. That's abuse. Say it enough times and people will believe it. Hazel. But what if he shows the receipts? Kathy. Then we'll make new ones. Leave it to me." Garcia worked fast. Within a week, he pulled the Starbucks security footage. Clear as day, Hazel and Kathy huddled over a laptop trying to breach my accounts. Then came the bombshell. One evening, Garcia called me, excitement in his voice. "You won't believe what I just found." He'd been trailing Kathy. She had rented a private workspace downtown. Garcia tailed her inside, posed as maintenance, and snapped photos of what she left on her desk. Stacks of falsified financial documents, fake pay stubs, altered bank statements, a draft petition claiming I siphoned funds, hid income, abused Hazel financially. All of it designed to paint me as the villain. Garcia emailed the photos. When I opened them, rage surged through me. My name, my company, twisted into weapons against me. Leo looked over my shoulder, his face grim. "Son, they're not just greedy, they're criminals." I nodded, fists clenched. "Then I'll treat them like criminals." That night, Hazel called again. This time I answered. Her voice was soft, sugar-laced. "Ethan, please, we don't have to fight. Just give me access again and I'll drop everything. We can work this out." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "You already worked it out, Hazel. With your sister, with forged documents, with lies to the police. I know everything." Her breath hitched. What are you talking about?" "Garcia has you on camera at Starbucks. He has photos of Kathy's fake paperwork. You're done." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then her voice cracked into a whisper. You wouldn't really take this to court, would you?" I almost laughed. "Hazel, you already did. I'm just showing up with the truth." I hung up, leaving her sobs echoing into the dead line. Lying in my father's guest room that night, staring at the ceiling fan turn slow circles, I realized something. The marriage was long gone. Love had been buried months ago. What remained now was a battlefield. Hazel thought she could rewrite the story play the victim walk away with half of everything I'd built, but she underestimated me. Because she forgot machines may shut down quietly, but when a man fights for his name, he doesn't just shut down. He fights back. And this time I had proof. The lies could have worked if Kathy had been smarter. But greed always leaves fingerprints, and Garcia knew exactly where to look. It was Leo who first spotted her pattern. Every Wednesday afternoon, he told me Kathy drives downtown, always to the same building. Doesn't match her work schedule, and she doesn't live anywhere near there. Garcia tailed her, discreet, patient. That's how he found the office room 402 in a shared workspace. Kathy rented it under a false name. From the outside, it looked harmless. Inside, it was a factory of fraud. One Thursday evening, Garcia called me. His voice had that edge, the one that meant something big. "Ethan, you're going to want to see this yourself." I drove downtown with Leo, my father, quiet in the passenger seat. His hand tapped the dashboard in a steady rhythm, the same way he used to drum the steering wheel before delivering bad news when I was a kid. When we arrived, Garcia was waiting outside the building, camera bag slung over his shoulder. "She's inside," he whispered. "Been here for 2 hours, let's move." We crept down the hallway past the humming vending machine, the flicker of fluorescent lights overhead. Garcia pushed the door open a crack. What I saw made my stomach churn. Kathy sat at a desk littered with papers. Bank statements, pay stubs, contracts, all doctored. She was cutting and pasting numbers, altering names, forging my signature. On one sheet in bold black ink were the words, "Petition for divorce, alleging financial abuse." She wasn't just helping Hazel, she was manufacturing evidence to bury me. Garcia lifted his camera. Click, click, click. Every movement, every document captured in high-resolution proof. Leo leaned in, jaw clenched. "Jesus Christ, she's not helping her sister. She's trying to rob you blind." I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. Part of me wanted to storm in, flip the desk, scream at her. But Garcia shook his head. "Not yet. You'll get your moment. But in court, not here." So I swallowed my rage and let the camera do the talking. The next day, Garcia compiled the evidence. Photos, timestamps, copies of the falsified documents he discreetly swiped while Kathy was distracted. It was a damning dossier. I slid it across the table to Leo. His hands shook as he flipped through the pages. "She's insane," he muttered. "Hazel and Kathy both." "You need more than a detective now, son. You need a lawyer who eats people like them for breakfast." That's how I met Alexander Price. Alexander didn't waste time with small talk. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. His office walls were lined with degrees and framed verdicts, the kind of lawyer who enjoyed leaving people in ruins. I laid it all out. The ATM comment, the credit card abuse, the hacking, the false police report, Kathy's document factory. When I finished, Alexander leaned back, steepling his fingers. "They want to paint you as an abuser," he said. "But with this evidence, they've painted themselves as criminals, fraud, perjury, attempted extortion. The judge won't just laugh them out of the room, he might refer them for charges." His calmness unsettled me, like he'd seen this movie before and the ending was already written. "So what do we do?" I asked. Alexander smiled, thin and cold. "We don't just defend, we attack. In mediation, they'll present demands, alimony, property company shares. We'll let them talk. Then we'll dismantle every word with evidence. We'll show Hazel's true colors, the wife who saw her husband as an ATM who conspired with her sister to forge documents. By the end, she'll be lucky to walk away with anything more than her Nordstrom paycheck." For the first time in months, I felt hope. Not joy, never joy, but the grim relief of knowing I wasn't walking into the fire empty-handed. Hazel must have sensed something had shifted. She called me the following evening, her tone trembling but rehearsed. "Ethan," she whispered, "we don't have to do this. I'm scared. Kathy said you're turning everyone against me. I just want peace." "Peace?" I asked. "You call false police reports? Peace. You call forged documents? Peace. You've declared war, Hazel. I'm just showing the judge the battlefield you created." She started crying. Real tears or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. Maybe she couldn't either. Please, she sobbed. Don't destroy me. You already destroyed yourself, I said coldly. I'm just the one bringing the receipts. Leo watched me hang up his face unreadable. You know, he said quietly, when your mother left me, I never fought. I just signed the papers, gave her what she wanted. I thought I was keeping the peace, but it ate me alive for years knowing she walked away, believing she won. Don't make my mistake. I nodded. I won't. And I meant it. The night before mediation, I couldn't sleep. I paced my father's living room, staring out at the dark Texas sky, the hum of cicadas loud in the heat. I thought about everything I'd built: my company, my house, my reputation. All of it hanging on lies Hazel and Kathy had cooked up in a dingy office over cheap wine. But I also thought about Garcia's photos. Kathy's face frozen in the flash as she doctored numbers. Hazel's texts admitting she couldn't live poor. Proof. Hard, undeniable proof. And with Alexander by my side, I wasn't walking in defenseless. Hazel thought she had me cornered. But tomorrow she would learn the truth. The machine wasn't broken. It was fully charged and ready to crush her lies under its weight. The mediation room smelled like stale coffee and cold paper. A long oak table divided the battlefield: Hazel and Kathy on one side, me and Alexander on the other. A mediator sat at the head, her voice calm but her eyes wary. She'd seen wars like this before. Hazel walked in first. She wore a cream blazer, hair curled perfectly, makeup layered thick enough to hide the sleepless nights, but her eyes betrayed her red glassy, darting toward mine, then away. Kathy followed close, carrying a binder stuffed with documents. She looked smug, like a general about to march into victory. She sat beside Hazel, whispering in her ear before the session began. I felt my stomach tighten, but Alexander leaned close and whispered, "Patience. Let them dig their own graves." The mediator cleared her throat. "We're here to discuss financial settlements and custody arrangements between Ethan Cole and Hazel Cole. Hazel, you may begin." Hazel straightened her voice, trembling at first, then gaining strength as she slipped into the role Kathy had rehearsed with her. "I gave up my career to support Ethan. I was a homemaker, sacrificing my opportunities so he could build his company. Now he's abandoned me, cut off my financial support, and left me destitute. I am requesting alimony of $6,000 a month, half of Cole Electric Solutions, and ownership of our marital home." The words hung in the air like smoke. $6,000 a month, half of my company, the house I paid for brick by brick. I clenched my fists under the table. Leo's words echoed in my head. "Don't make my mistake. Fight." The mediator turned to me. "Mr. Cole, your response." I opened my mouth, but Alexander placed a hand on my arm. "Not yet," he murmured. "Let her finish." Hazel continued, emboldened. "I've endured years of financial abuse," she said, her voice cracking theatrically. "Ethan controlled all the accounts, humiliated me in public by cutting off my credit cards, made me feel like a prisoner. I had no freedom. I was nothing more than his dependent." Kathy slid a document across the table, smirking. "We've prepared evidence of Ethan's financial misconduct," she said. Alexander didn't even glance at it. He waited until the mediator nodded. "Mr. Price, you may respond." Alexander rose slowly, like a predator stretching before the kill. He adjusted his cufflinks, then spoke with the calm confidence of a man who had done this 100 times before. "Your Honor, opposing counsel has painted Mr. Cole as a tyrant who starved his wife of resources. But let's examine the truth." He picked up a folder and laid out the first exhibit, a transcript of Hazel's own words captured in Garcia's recordings. "This," Alexander said, voice steady, "is Hazel Cole, referring to my client as, and I quote, an ATM with legs. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, in public, in front of friends. This was not a joke. It was her worldview. My client wasn't a husband to her. He was a bank." Hazel's face flushed red. Kathy whispered furiously, but Alexander kept going. "Next, we have bank statements showing thousands in luxury spending every month. Designer purses, shoes, cosmetics. Purchases that far exceeded her income. All charged to Mr. Cole's accounts without consultation or agreement." He dropped the statements on the table. The pages fanned out like a deck of cards, every line item another nail in Hazel's coffin. Hazel shifted in her seat. The mediator scribbled notes. Now about this so-called financial abuse. Alexander's tone sharpened. Cutting off credit cards isn't abuse when those cards are being used to drain company funds. It's called fiscal responsibility. My client provided Hazel with access for years until she crossed the line. That's not abuse. That's protection. Hazel tried to interject. That's not... Silence, the mediator said firmly. You'll have your turn. Alexander smiled thinly. Finally, Your Honor, we come to Exhibit C. He clicked a remote. On the screen behind him appeared photos Garcia had taken Kathy in her rented office surrounded by forged documents. Her face frozen in shock, caught in the flash. The room went silent. These, Alexander said, are falsified financial documents prepared by Hazel's sister, draft petitions, fake pay stubs, altered bank statements, all designed to frame my client as a thief and an abuser. Kathy's face drained of color. She leaned toward Hazel, whispering urgently, but Hazel looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Alexander didn't stop. These aren't just lies. They're crimes, fraud, attempted extortion, conspiracy. We have timestamps, IP logs, and physical evidence. Detective Garcia is prepared to testify. The mediator's eyes widened.
Mrs. Cole, is this true?
Hazel stammered. I didn't know. Alexander cut in, his voice like steel. She knew. She benefited. She played victim while her sister forged evidence to rob my client blind. This isn't a divorce case anymore. It's a criminal conspiracy. The session imploded. Hazel sobbed, collapsing against the table. Kathy shouted, "This is a setup you can't prove." Two marshals entered the room, summoned quietly by Alexander beforehand. They moved toward Kathy. Ms. Miller once said, "You're under investigation for fraud and forgery. Please stand." Kathy's face twisted with rage. "Hazel, say something, tell them." But Hazel didn't move. She sat, frozen tears streaking her makeup as her sister was cuffed and led out of the room. The sound of the door closing behind them was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. The mediator sighed. Given this evidence, Mrs. Cole's demands are denied. The court awards Mr. Cole primary ownership of Cole Electric Solutions. The marital home will be sold with 80% of the proceeds to Mr. Cole, 20% to Mrs. Cole. Alimony is set at $800 per month for 1 year only. No further claims will be entertained. It was over. Hazel's face crumpled, her dreams of wealth collapsing into dust. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply exhaled, the weight of months of lies finally lifting from my chest. Alexander packed his papers, glanced at me, and whispered, "Told you. Attack, not defend." As I walked out of the courthouse, Leo at my side, I felt the Texas sun on my face. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the burden of being someone's ATM, someone's fool, someone's scapegoat. Behind me, Hazel was left with nothing but her Nordstrom paycheck and the wreckage of her sister's schemes. And I knew, as the marshals led Kathy away, that justice had finally turned its head in my direction. Hazel always thought she'd land on her feet. That was her illusion, the lie she clung to when things began to crumble. In her mind, there was always a man, a safety net, a soft place to land when the bills came due. She thought no matter how many bridges she burned, someone else would build another one for her. But this time there was no one left. After the mediation, the fallout came swift and merciless. Kathy was the first to go down. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, 6 months in county jail. The woman who strutted into our kitchen spouting advice about empowerment now spent her days in a gray cell eating rubbery eggs from a plastic tray. She had no audience, no sister to whisper to, no wine glass to swirl while poisoning Hazel's ear. For the first time, Kathy had nothing but silence. And Hazel was left standing in the wreckage. The house went first. The court's order was clear, sold, split 80-20. My share secured the company's future and paid off outstanding debts. Hazel's share barely scraped together enough for a down payment on a 1-bedroom near the freeway. Gone were the marble counters and the chandelier she bragged about to friends. Gone was the walk-in closet where she used to line up her designer handbags like trophies. Her new place smelled of mildew. The carpet was stained, the radiator clanged in the night, and the neighbors screamed at each other through paper-thin walls. The glamorous image Hazel once curated online had been replaced by the hum of broken appliances and the sting of overdue bills. Her Nordstrom paycheck, $800 on a good month, barely stretched across rent, utilities, and groceries. She begged her manager for extra shifts, standing on her feet for 10-hour days, ringing up credit cards that weren't hers, watching women walk out with bags she could no longer afford. At home, she lit half-melted candles from clearance bins, trying to mask the smell of failure. She propped broken picture frames against peeling paint, telling herself she was rebuilding. And online Instagram turned pitiful. The champagne flutes and five-star dinners were gone. In their place, blurry coffee mugs and captions like "Every setback is a setup for a comeback" or "Strong women survive storms." But no one bought it. Her followers evaporated. The queen of curated luxury was now another tired cashier quoting Pinterest. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Cole Electric Solutions was stronger than ever. A multi-million-dollar contract with the city put us on the map. I hired more crews, expanded operations, doubled revenue. For the first time, my work wasn't about survival, it was about growth legacy. And personally, I wasn't just surviving either. That's when I met Kelly. It was at a charity gala, an event Hazel once would have begged me to attend so she could show off her dress. Kelly was different. Sharp suit, minimal jewelry, confidence that filled the room without trying. She didn't care about cameras or appearances. She cared about results. She worked as a financial analyst, pulling 6 figures without anyone else's help. Independent, grounded, everything Hazel wasn't. On our first date, she insisted on splitting the bill. "I don't take handouts," she said with a smile that was equal parts challenge and charm. I laughed a real laugh, one I hadn't felt in years. It was like fresh air after suffocating in entitlement. But the past never vanishes. It circles back, testing the strength of your scars. 3 months later, I took Kelly to Brennan's, one of Houston's finest restaurants. White tablecloths, chandeliers, soft jazz luxury Hazel used to demand just to snap photos for her followers. Halfway through dessert, I heard a voice at the bar, slurred, desperate, familiar. Hazel. She was drunk, mascara-streaked hair, limp, clinging to a cheap purse. She was loud enough to draw stares from half the room. When her eyes found mine, they widened. "Ethan!" she cried, stumbling across the floor. "Ethan, baby, please! You can't just leave me like this! Look at me, I'm nothing without you!" Every fork in the restaurant froze mid-air. Diners turned in unison, their curiosity sharp as knives. Kelly's eyes flicked from Hazel to me, calm but assessing. Hazel collapsed against our table, clutching my sleeve. "You ruined me! You and your damn lawyer, you took everything, I have nothing left." Her voice cracked loud enough to echo against the chandeliers. I stood slowly, pulling my arm free, and met her gaze with all the cold clarity I'd earned. "No, Hazel," I said, voice steady. "I didn't ruin you. You ruined yourself. I just stopped paying for it." The words cut through the silence like glass shattering. Hazel broke down, sobbing so hard the waiters had to intervene. They guided her gently back toward the door as she wailed, mascara dripping down her cheeks, her dignity collapsing in front of strangers. Kelly slipped her hand into mine. "That your ex?" "Yes," I said simply. She nodded, unbothered. "Then I suppose I'm the upgrade?" The restaurant chuckled quietly, tension broken. Hazel's cries faded into the night. Driving home, the city lights stretched across the highway like new horizons. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not angry, not bitter, free. Hazel had called me an ATM with legs. She thought my love was a bank account, my sacrifices an endless loan. She tried to turn my name into a weapon, my company into her ticket. She thought I would always be the net. But when the net vanished, she was the one who fell. And me, I didn't fall with her. I built higher. I found someone who saw me as a man, not a machine. I rediscovered the peace of knowing I didn't have to beg for respect it was given freely, earned equally. Hazel lost her safety net. I found my life again, and for once I didn't feel like an ATM. I felt like myself. When I look back, it's strange how fast everything unraveled. One comment at a dinner table, Hazel calling me an ATM with legs, was the spark. But truthfully, the fire had been smoldering for years. I worked. I sacrificed. I poured myself into building a company, a home, a life. Hazel and Kathy saw only the balance sheets, never the sweat that created them. To them, I wasn't a partner or a man. I was a machine. And when the machine stopped dispensing, they turned vicious. The credit cards, The hacking attempts, the lies to the police, the forged documents. Every step was another nail they hammered into the coffin of our marriage. I could have rolled over. A part of me almost did, out of exhaustion, out of fear of looking like the villain. But my father's voice kept echoing, "Don't make my mistake. Fight." So I fought. Garcia's camera caught Kathy in the act. Alexander shredded their fabricated narrative in mediation. The truth won not because it shouted the loudest, but because it carried receipts. Hazel walked away with scraps. Kathy walked away in cuffs. And I walked away with my name intact. But here's the thing, this story isn't really about money. It's about respect. Money can buy handbags, houses, even temporary followers online, but it cannot buy loyalty. It cannot buy integrity. It cannot buy love. Hazel thought she could trade in affection for allowance. She thought power came from swiping a card someone else paid for. And Kathy thought deception could spin gold from lies. They both learned the same truth: greed always bankrupts itself. Now my life is different. My company is stronger than ever. I found a woman who doesn't need my bank account to validate her worth. And most importantly, I found myself again. Do I regret the years with Hazel sometimes? But regret is wasted energy. What matters is the lesson: never let yourself become someone else's machine. Because the moment you do, they'll forget you're human. They'll push. They'll demand. They'll laugh in your face, confident the cash will never stop flowing. Until one day it does. And when that day comes, the machine doesn't break. It resets. And the people who treated you like a transaction, they're the ones left bankrupt. Hazel lost her ATM. I gained back my freedom. And in the end, that was worth more than every dollar she ever spent. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.